Ring ding doo rum bum ba ring ding da da ring doo doo bum bum ba da da. Yo, what is cooking? Thank you so much for having made it this far.
Episode 4.
To episode 4. If at this point you've binged all 4 episodes,
Thank you so much.
and if you have not yet subscribed to the newsletter,
You're doing something wrong.
what are you doing? Because this is for you.
Yeah.
You are the kind of person.
You are one of us, a discourser.
Yeah, exactly. So take a look at it. This episode was awesome. It was a real blast for us to record. It was the first episode that we ever recorded at someone else's house in Toronto. So you'll see a little bit more of that in the next coming weeks of us, going around to some of our friends around Toronto and interviewing them. But this one was a real blast. And if you know Chris Mayhew in any way, then you'll know that, he had us whipped up in laughter through the whole entire thing. So without further ado, here is the interview with Chris Mayhew about improv. So hard to say. The interview about improv with Chris Mayhew and life and everything. And, well, why don't you guys just you take a look. Here it is.
Hello, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Tyler Williams. I'm here with my partner, Jonah.
Hey, how are you?
And our very good friend, Chris Mayhew.
Hello. Oh, I guess I shouldn't hold the mic. Hello.
Hey.
What's going on?
What's cooking?
Holding the microphone and messing it all up. I love it.
That's okay. It's actually awesome. We are all
Does this is that?
we are all here actually together for the first time for our recording, and it's really awesome. And we're at Mayhew's house and we're jamming and we're having a good time. So
Yeah, man, it's...
At 555 Evergreen Terrace,
Why? Why?
Toronto, Ontario.
Now they'll have to mail me like some gifts and stuff. We're 555.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in with a question that we ask everyone. And this is funny because we're friends and we go back like quite a while, but we don't really ask each other what our origin stories are of magic. Like, I know how you came to the city, but I don't really know how you jumped into magic. So how did you find magic? Did magic find you? When did you decide that it sort of was your thing to go full time?
We found each other.
Oh.
No, yeah, it's always like that classic story, of you get the magic kid as a kid.
I love it.
But that was not the case for me. No.
Ooh.
You see, I was born at a very young age.
I was born at a very young age.
No, so as a kid, my dad, he was always on the road, and every now and then he would come back. Oh, yes, closer. He would come back with some kind of trinket, right? It could be anything, but sometimes it would be like one of those. You could get at Toys R Us. It was the.
I know what you're talking about.
It's very popular.
Rope cutter?
Tenyo.
Yeah.
Tenyo?
Like the
Something
Tenyo
like
line.
that.
They had like a line of their things at Toys R Us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those were the first kind of trinkets that I ever got, like, interested in magic. But it's never really an interest. It's just, like, there's so many interests as a child that it's just one of the many.
Right.
So, there's always that moment
Yeah,
where
a lot of
finally
young people do magic.
Well, the thing about, as a child is everything's magical, right? So, this is, like, extra magical, right? So everything's magical. And like, oh, my God, everything's so amazing. Whoa, this is even more amazing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
sometimes it can pique your interest, and a lot of kids do get interested in magic at a very young age, but then it'll kind of fade quickly once they get other interests. But I guess for me, that's where I got kind of lucky because around junior high or so, a magic shop actually opened up just like down the street from my parents' place, right?
In Calgary.
Yeah, in Calgary, like just 2 blocks away.
Wow.
And so I remember being on the bus and like seeing just magic shop sign. I was like, whoa, what is that thing? And so going to a magic shop for the first time as a kid is a really, really powerful experience.
But that's awesome that you got into magic because a magic shop opened up. Like, what a dream of the magic shop, you know? They're like, we hope that we're going to come and everyone's going to become a magician. We want everyone to be a magician.
Yeah. For sure. And, well, at the same time, that was around the same time David Blaine had just kind of had his TV special. So that also kind of piqued my interest even more, right? Because I had just seen sort of a mind-blowing thing, right? Actually, skipping back before, so there was a magic kit. There was a magic kit story. So I did have this magic kit as a kid, but it was kind of just in the garbage drawer with a bunch of things, right?
I have a garbage bin.
I don't want to say garbage, but like the toy drawer, right? Where you just have a bunch of pile of forgotten toys, right? Where you still don't want to throw them out, you want to keep them because you find value in them, but you don't never play with them, right? So that was somewhere there, but I remember one of my friends one time did the Vanishing Silk, right?
Ooh,
and I remember just being like, what the hell? That's so crazy, right? And I remembered all the objects in the magic kit, but I never read the instructions to know what they were actually used for properly, right? I just kind of make it up myself, like, oh, this could be used for this or something. I don't know. Whatever's bullshit. And so when he vanished the silk, I was like, oh my god, how do you do that?
Real magic exists.
And then he showed me, the tool that you use, and I was like, I have one of those in that kit. Oh my god, right? And I just like zoned in where it was, like in the room, like in the closet or something. I was like, I know exactly where it is. I went home, and the kit wasn't there. I was like, oh shit, the kit's not here. Where is it? I scoured everywhere and couldn't find this magic kit because I thought that I still had it. And I was like, I guess I don't have the kit. And then I finally found it like a couple days later or something like that. And the thought, what?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's all right.
Edit that thing out. Anyways, the tool was there, right? And it did not fit me properly at all. It was just like a piece of crap. I was like, oh, dang it. And so that was always in the back of my mind, like, I want that, right?
Yeah, it was...
So I, move on several, years later, finally Magic Shop is there.
And that's just like, so exciting.
I can get that thing finally, right? That's what I want. That's what I want.
They must have every size of that thing.
And so that's what I go in the shop, is like, I want this, right? And then he showed me some stuff with it. I was like, that's so cool. And then the Magic Shop owner, who is Brent Smith, it's the Vanishing Rabbit Magic Shop in Calgary, Alberta. So if you're in Calgary, Alberta, go check it out. It's a wicked shop. He showed me just like all these things that I hadn't seen, right? And as a kid, again, when you haven't been exposed to magic for so long, everything is like extra magical. You're just like, holy shit, that actually exists. Like someone figured out how to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's like trick after trick, and then you like start kind of buying certain little packet. I actually learned most of my sleight of hand through packet tricks.
Yeah.
It wasn't books necessarily or DVDs. That came later, but I just bought so many freaking little packet tricks.
Yeah,
and each one
individual
had a different
effects.
Count or sleight, and so you learn all of those, right? I remember actually feeling ripped off from. Do you remember NFW?
Yeah.
That trick with the jokers.
Yeah.
This is right. And every kid always asks, like, what does it stand for NFW? I asked that. What does it stand for NFW?
Cool. So that's an interesting origin story because a lot of the origin stories so far have people who really do start off with kits, and sort of was like a combo for you. So you started with the kit and the combination of the store being there and having like the answer to your problems. Yeah, so cool. So that's a really interesting story. And I think it's perfect for us to dive in and talk about our topic today. And our topic today is improv. And improv is something that no matter what you do, if you're doing magic, it's going to be really hard. I mean, unless you're doing stage production, card productions, like there's a little bit of interaction. And if there's interaction in your magic, then it's important for you to know how to work with your spectators, interact with them, create humor, or even better, like be able to accept humor when the moment presents itself, and
definitely. And just go with the flow of things.
Yeah, and be able to do that, be able to and. So I think it's a really perfect topic in magic, and I think a good question to start with is how you and magic and improv go together.
Okay, so...
I mean, they might not, but I'm sure...
no, definitely. You know, again, there's like a bit of an origin story there, too, where improv is actually a very magical thing to me in a lot of different ways. First, you know, because I'm originally from Calgary, Alberta, and there is a very small improv scene there, but it's nothing like Toronto. Like Toronto, there's improv everywhere. And so when I...
there's a group called Improv Everywhere.
Yeah. It's so funny. So moving here, I wasn't even aware of the improv community for like the first like 2 or 3 years that I lived here. You know, I was more focused on film and magic, or videos and magic and stuff like that. But then it wasn't until Chris Westfall, who you guys should definitely interview. He's got some really interesting
He's booked
stuff.
for next week.
Yeah.
He's got some stuff to talk about. But he was actually the one that kind of almost forced me into improv in a way, because I was actually very apprehensive, you know. I always knew that it would improve the magic, right? Because magic in a way is improvised to a certain extent as far as the interaction with the crowd. You know what trick is going to happen, but you don't know what's going to happen during that trick.
Yeah,
you know,
sometimes people can say something.
You.
Yeah,
they can do. There's many things that could go wrong, right? And in my case, everything goes wrong all the time. Every time I've done something, it goes wrong. Right? So I knew that improv was super necessary, but I was always afraid of it, right?
Well, it's a scary thing to put yourself out there and try, right?
Because the point of improv, more than... Like, I always talk about how the point of magic is to do something impossible and how that benefits you. Yeah. But the point of improv is to be not prepared in any way, right? So that's almost like the opposite of everything that anyone else prepares for, right? Like, any games, any competition, anything. The advice, like, the advice is just make sure that you're prepared.
Yeah.
With improv, like, it's more like make sure you're practiced, I guess, because you are coming out there blank, or to an extent.
That's a good way to put it. Make sure you're practiced, because once you kind of understand, like, sort of how to do it, you know, the idea of yes and. You really can't go wrong as long as you just kind of go with things and don't say no, right?
Right.
You know, it can't help but unfold in an interesting way, right? That's just human nature. But I guess, so, yeah, I was actually very apprehensive to go into improv. And Chris, he was like, you know, basically, I'm signing up, right? You can join me and we'll do it together, but I'm doing it regardless.
Yeah.
Right? And... he's like kind of been the guy that has really kind of just in a way inspired me to kind of put myself out there, because when I first moved to Toronto, I wasn't performing, or any of that. I didn't want to perform, actually. Right? And so he kind of started throwing me gigs, and I was saying, no, I got a job, I don't need to take the gigs, right? But then once I didn't have a job, I was like, okay, maybe I will take those gigs, right? And then you kind of have to learn how to perform, right? Just by...
It's so funny that multiple people have said, like, that one of the biggest ways that they, like, learn to perform is because they had to, because they were being hired.
Yeah.
Which seems so counterintuitive. You'd think that, like, you get good before people start hiring you, but oftentimes you can get hired before you're that good.
Well, the opportunity
and that's when you
is
learn.
Just there,
yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
In this case, I had a friend who... couldn't do gigs because he had other gigs.
Yeah,
right? He was getting so much work, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And so he was kind of throwing them my way, enticing me to get out there. And I'm in my room like, no, I'm just going to create magic. That's all I want to do is create magic, right? I got another job. I don't need the money. I'll just create magic. I don't want to perform, right? And then once I left the job, and I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to just do... my own thing, but what is my own thing, right? I thought it was film at first, and so I put myself in the film industry, and that was, like, freaking crazy. I'm like, maybe I don't necessarily want to do this like this, right? I want to do my own way.
Right.
So you gotta have to figure out your own way of doing things sometimes, right? And so magic was kind of just there, and I was like, these opportunities are coming my way. Why am I so foolish not to take them, right? But... So getting back on track to improv, right? So I was already just kind of getting into performing in general, right? Let alone just performing being not prepared to perform, right? And so I'm just learning this pattern of being prepared, right? Showing up for the game, knowing what I'm gonna do, right? I had like the exact set of tricks that I would do, right? But now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you want to go learn how to, not be prepared, right? It's like, I don't know, right? But always in the back of my head, it's like, it will help you, right? And I knew that if I saw Chris improve drastically as a magician, which of course it's going to help him improve, it's going to help anybody improve drastically, right? If I saw that and I wasn't there joining him with him, I would have regretted it, right? I would have been like, damn, I should have.
Yeah, you'd be like, what an opportunity.
What
a missed opportunity,
right?
yeah.
And so I was like, you know what, I want to learn and grow, and it would also, grow with our it would help our friendship grow, right? Which it did, of course. And
it's like a lot less scary when you have someone
what
you
I
know
realized
in the audience.
Actually, Chris is sort of like my performing vice in a way. Not a vice. That's what was strange. Crutch. That's my performing crutch, because we're just getting into stand-up comedy, right? And I don't feel comfortable going to a gig without him
when he's
there.
not there, yeah.
I don't want to be there by myself. I want someone to be there to kind of either succeed or fail with me.
Yeah.
Or at least be there to pat me on the back when I fail miserably, and they succeed, because he's getting very good at stand-up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's always kind of been there as just like my performer crutch to help me along the way, and I don't even think he knows it. Right?
Well, he will soon.
He will now.
He will soon.
But,
hi, Chris.
yes, I love you. But, so he's like, yo, just take the class. And so finally I took the class, right? And this was the Improv level A at Second City, right? And also Second City is pretty legendary. Like, John Candy came from there. A lot of, memorable and still alive comedians, right? John Candy is not with us, bless his soul, but yeah, I love you, Jack. I love candy. I want some candy. But there's it's a very, very good place to learn improv, right? And so it's like, okay, let's do this. And once I took level A, just magic happened, right? But literal magic, that's where I met my girlfriend, is in level A improv, right? And
so the whole thing evolved from that.
Yeah, it's
I'm not gonna make you share it, but I'm gonna share that I think your story of meeting your current girlfriend is the most romantic thing I've
never
ever
heard it, so tell it
life.
because this is great.
Well, it's just interesting, I was actually, so getting into improv, it was actually just around the same time that I was just getting into dating. I actually had not felt ready to date for a long time, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to actually put myself out there romantically, I guess, right? And
improv maybe helps you learn how fun it is to put yourself out there in a lot of ways.
It's a time in your life where you're taking risks.
For
you're
sure,
you're
you're just trying to put yourself out there and just absorb and learn everything, just be in the moment, right? And so, yeah, I was just kind of going into the dating scene, and I just come off of a few, really, not bad dates, but just interesting dates where it's like, okay, that didn't really go where I was hoping, right? And one of the things I realized that I can get pretty deep pretty quickly, right? And I can kind of lose people really quickly, right? And so I remember just kind of being in my room and just thinking to myself, okay, what is it that you want? A lot of people don't even know what they want, right? Let alone just trying, putting themselves out there. It's like, I don't know. And so I started thinking, I was like, okay, well, I definitely want someone who is mature, right? But very mature as far as, I have a younger sister, and she is, she can be pretty wild, right? And so any little sign of immaturity of any sort just kind of completely throws me out. It's like, no. And so there was definitely a certain maturity that I needed to find in a woman. But on top of that, I'm also very into Asian women. They're just any type of Asian woman. I just love that. It's I got the yellow fever. But
that should be the tag.
This podcast is officially explicit, by the way.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Explicit.
There's no way we're getting through this.
I swear to God, this is interesting. And so, in improv, I met this woman that met all of these things, and I was like, what the heck? I dreamed this person up, and now all of a sudden this dream person came to life just because I put myself out there into this thing that I was scared of in the first place, right? And and so it was just interesting that I met my.
You found her right after you put together all the things.
Yeah, as soon as I just thought about it and kind of put it all together, it was just like there it happened, right? And so, call it coincidence, call it what you will. I believe that there is something that is just you must just follow through and look for.
Yeah, awesome. So cool. So improv has been like a really moving thing in like a lot of different ways. So what could somebody do if, let's say, they're not taking a course, but they want to put skills of improv into their magic? Is there any quick tips you could give them to try to make their magic more, open to change, maybe open to like like accepting lines or accepting moments or producing moments when they're there, like...
Yeah, well, definitely being super aware of everything, right? A lot of people seem to get into this pattern of their patter, right? It's like, I have to say this because it goes with this moment and this thing, right?
There's a certain comfort to scripting.
Yeah, and they kind of just, you can tell when they go into performance mode, right? And they just do their
often
thing,
blind
right?
to like the spectator.
Yeah, they're, and like the spectator will say something, they're like, let me get through this, right? And so just being aware of everything that is happening, right? And not just what the spectator is doing, but even your environment, something, maybe a dog is barking in the corner, right, really loudly, and maybe you could play off that somehow, right? So just being aware of everything around you really does help with the magic, right? Because the magic is supposed to be all about that moment, right, and that experience. And so why does it have to be so just... you do want to focus on magic, but that whole place where you are at that time is really
often
stage,
important,
right?
Yeah,
right, yeah.
And like sometimes if you're doing, depending like stage or close up or stuff like that, like your positioning is.
Just drinking some water. Sorry.
Your positioning is that you need to like be aware of the spectator and the whole audience and everyone and the room,
Yeah.
So you can't be ignoring that in case something happens. So you need to,
especially in a restaurant environment, right, where there's wait staff going through, they got dishes. You don't want to be getting in their way.
You want to tell them almost before exactly how you are going to conduct yourself.
And that's super important. Is you don't want to be getting in anybody's way.
Right.
If you're interrupting something in a negative way, that's not good, right? I've had it I have a very loud voice. I have like Austin Powers, makes fun of it, where he's like, I have control. I think it's Austin Powers where he's like, I have control with the pitch of my voice or something like that. So he's just like has trouble controlling it. But I actually have that problem. Like I'm doing it right now. Right, there's probably spiking in the red levels. And so I remember I was at a restaurant. I was just performing, right, and like it's pretty noisy, so you kind of have to talk over.
Yeah.
The noise of the environment to a certain extent, right? Because they do need to hear, what's happening, or else they're like, what is this person doing with a cork and an elastic band and some nickels and a bill? Like, what the heck is happening right now? This is so random, right? So you have to give it context, right? That's important.
Safety all the time.
Yeah. And so I would be trying to yell pretty loud, and I remember there's this one time where there was this couple that, I actually kind of disturbed their meal, and they're like, oh, can you please... keep it down a little bit, like we can't hear each other talk. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, right? And I was like, shit, you really have to be aware of what's around you, right? And considerate, right, towards others. That's important, because some magicians are just like bulls in china shops, right? It's like, okay, I'm performing, everybody, move aside, we're performing here, right? You get that tunnel vision of the performance.
So how could somebody who's like, oh, go ahead.
Not only is that bad because you're interrupting what is going on, what needs to be going on, but that's not organic magic, right? That makes it feel so much more forced, right? And what you're trying to do is create magic, right? And like you need to be able to create magic in the space that you're actually in, right? And use it to your advantage sometimes, whenever you can, right?
Yeah, also often like situationally, like you really can leverage your surroundings, like very funny things happen. There's what is that joke? There's a joke.
The gorilla?
No, something about every time a phone rings. Like, maybe this was in Strong Magic is what I'm thinking of. But it was explaining why like you really don't like interruptions. And one of the ideas for when something interrupts you is to say like, this is so weird. Like every time a phone rings, so if a phone rings when it happens, you go, and every time a phone rings, like the card comes back to the top, and it's just a funny way to leverage it. Maybe it wasn't from that book, but I'm just thinking about it because like it's a
that's
good
great.
Way. What little tips could you give to someone who maybe is stuck in their phrasing? You know, maybe they're stuck in their patter or they're stuck in their like moves.
They freeze up. Whatever.
How can someone be more open to their surroundings?
Well, definitely, like, freezing can definitely, like, getting the nervous hands and stuff, that's, like, a huge thing, right? Just the shaky hands. And then you feel so paralyzed when that happens, right? Paralyzed when that happens because you can't execute these sleights that you normally know you can execute, right? Just in practice, you're like, I know I can do this, but suddenly my hands aren't working properly, right? And so that really sucks, right? But then, yeah, on top of that, if you're not even, if you're stuck in your own little bubble, right, with presentation as well, you know, all these things kind of just make for a sort of an awkward performance, right? And so the one piece of advice I could say as far as freezing and that nervousness goes is just having a very easy trick that doesn't require almost any sleight of hand to do that first, right? Because one of the things that nervousness is really just adrenaline, right? It's adrenaline kind of going through your body because you put yourself in that moment, you're all wrapped up, and it's that fight or flight reflex, right? And your body actually puts all the energy into your larger muscles, right? So that they can kind of run away. So you lose all those tiny motor skills, right? So you're literally working against your body's chemistry, you know, so you don't feel too bad about yourself, right? It's not that you suck. So your body is literally going, no, you're not going to be able to do it right now. You got to get out of here. And you're going, no, we're staying.
Yeah, we're staying. I have to prove them the card is...
This shit, right? And so by doing something really simple and kind of just, it allows you to concentrate on the performance side of things, right? And that performance side of things then allows you to kind of just free yourself and kind of go with the flow and do the improv stuff, right? And so, and what else is there? Start thinking of...
I often find that improv, like people who do improv, have a very similar but positive like similarity where they're very like open and very talkative, and it's a quality that you want for a magician, you know, and
for
like
sure, there's a definite social
and so
they
I feel
listen.
like exactly.
Because
wow,
huge.
that's
a
really
huge
good.
Part of
that's
it,
really
right?
true.
You
can feel it. So like one of the things I was thinking is like you can practice improv without performing magic. You know, you can practice improv in your surroundings by just like, you know, being very active in conversation.
Right?
Exactly.
It's not
like
just something that you use for performance. It's something that you can use for life, right? Because a lot of times in life, you get hung up on shit, right? Sometimes you could get hung up on the stupidest shit, right? Like you lost a glove or something. It's like, God damn it!
Why'd you remind me? With the
I had the perfect pair of gloves. It's gone now. Shit, you know? And in the grand scheme of things, it's like, that is so useless, right? Why would you even worry about that shit, right? Like, the fact that you get to worry about losing a glove is amazing, right?
The fact that you can even get to worry about not having one of your gloves.
You get to worry about not having.
You should be
You get
thanking.
to have a cold hand. You get to have one cold hand.
You
or
should
you
be
with your
thanking
one cold
yourself.
pinky. Some people have their whole body cold.
You with one
right? But
incredibly
true.
warm hand, still
you
complaining.
Can get hung up on shit, right? And it's so easy, and so. To have this idea of yes and, you know, it's like you can apply that to anything, right? You can apply that to the glove. It's like, yes, I don't have a glove, but now I got one cold hand. I get to appreciate the warm hand.
Why are you banging your head against the wall? Because it feels so good when I stop. Yeah. So I have a really fun question that I think like really relates to improv and magic. So what's a time where maybe you were you know, like a lot of times like magic goes wrong, you know? So is there maybe a time where you fixed it with improv, or even maybe a time where you didn't, but maybe like improv later made you think back to how you could have?
Sometimes where you have to kind of just think on the spot in the moment. And luckily, the character that I've kind of developed in performance can get away with a lot of things just because I kind of set up the fact that I'm clumsy and fail.
Do you think that a non-comedic clumsy, I think clumsy is like very unique to you, but a non-comedic, very like open magician would really benefit from improv the same way that...
Yeah, anybody will benefit from improv, right? Because it'll just teach you to kind of first listen and be aware of your surroundings, and then go with the flow, right? But it's easy to say that, but it's a lot more difficult to actually apply it and do it, right? But yeah, anybody can definitely benefit from improv, and magical things could happen to you just, by putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as messing up goes, there's been a lot of times where stuff has gone wrong, and I've had to kind of just look at the situation and kind of go with it. One of the times that was interesting is, and I kind of planned for this in a way, I would sometimes work with 2 decks of cards, and it wasn't actually meant as a security as far as, I'm going to have a backup card. It was meant mostly as a thing, as I didn't like the diminishing deck, right? Because you get cards signed, and so I'd always like to have a card that I could put back in the deck so the deck never shrinks, right? So it's more of just like that, right? But I realized the advantage is now I have a card in my back pocket, so if I force that card, I always have a backup of that card if something were to go wrong.
That's
right?
good.
And so one time I was doing a trick, and it was this trick where it was a Jason England trick, where you kind of have the cards selected, and then you try to read their faces, and you separate the deck into reds and blacks, and you just narrow it down to the wrong card, right? And so if their card is a king of clubs, right, you narrow it down to the 5 of hearts, right?
Wow.
But you're just getting everything wrong along the way. But it seems really impossible because you have one card, right, and it's like it's the completely wrong card, but there's this mental thing going on right in the head where they're like, this guy's completely messed this crap up.
Yeah.
And there's just this single card left, and then it becomes their card, and it's like, oh my god.
Oh wow.
Or it is their card, right? I tried to do the convincer of, because there's a couple ways you can play it. You can play it as you lead them down the one path, and you're like, I was leading you down the wrong path. I did get it right.
Yeah.
Right? Or you can take the magic way, where it's like, oh, I got it wrong. Crap, hold on. Let me make it right. Right, and then you get it right. I play it usually along the path of, I led them down the wrong path. Oh, I actually had it right. Right, but until this moment happened where the person actually took the card out of the deck, right? So I give them the deck to shuffle, right? And that's the nice thing about this, is that they can really shuffle the deck, and the card's in there, and then you just narrow it down to the wrong card and hold it back, right? But I go through the deck when I get it back, and I go through, and their card's not in it. So I'm like, okay, well, he fucking took it out of the deck. Piece of crap, right? So I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to keep doing the trick like normal and figure it out, right? And so I eventually knew, like, okay, I have this backup card in my pocket. I'm going to feed it into the deck, right? But then I'm like, well, but then what is the effect? That's fucking weird. Then
because he has one, yeah.
So then they know that I have, like, multiple cards. What's happening here, right? So I had no idea what the effect was yet, right?
Yeah.
I just know I'm going to go with the flow and narrow it down, right, to this card, right? And so I get to this card, right? And I always play it off like I've really got it wrong, right? Like I've completely messed the trick up. But now there's almost complete justification that I've got the trick wrong, right? Because this guy took the card out. So I get to this card, I'm like, what was the card? And they're like, yeah, it was the 2 of spades. And I'm like, hold on, but no, this should have worked. Did something happen? Did somebody do something? What happened here, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, he took the card out of the deck, right? I'm like, oh, crap, And so now everybody's like, oh, he really did mess this trick up, right? I was like, hold on. And this is when I realized, oh, dude, the color changed. And I'm like, hold on, I can fix it. Right? And it's like, now it is your card, right? And they're like, what the hell? And they're like completely freaked out. But what's interesting is that I realized that this is actually very logical. if you were to change the color of a card to the correct card,
there would
two of
be
those cards
two.
would be in existence, right?
Yeah.
But most magicians don't play it that way. Most magicians play it as if the card switched into
it's like a
card,
transposition.
right?
Which is exactly what secretly happens. Which is
which is
Yeah.
not
don't
what we want.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and so what I realized is that this is
Clever.
actually, if you were to do a color change of the card, there would be duplicates in existence. So this
Yeah.
makes perfect sense, and so this is actually how I do the trick now.
Wow.
In order to do it, is I'd have
Bottom
like,
line,
the
you use
right?
dupes.
Wow. So you got, Improv now made a trick for you. You know what I mean? Like really changed an effect for you.
You know, and I shared this with a friend of mine who you should also get on this, Michael Feldman, who's a lawyer in San Francisco who does some awesome magic. But I shared this with him, and then he's explored the kind of premise, because it's an interesting premise, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you could take it further than this, but just the idea of having two cards in existence, because it's sort of it's an obvious thing, but it's a strange thing if you frame it.
You know what it could be framed
right?
as? It could be framed very much like time travel. You know, like if you go back in time and
Right.
there's two of you, right? So as soon as you change a card to any other card, and there's automatically two of those cards,
Yeah.
and none of
And
the
so that's
cards
the
that
thing.
there is.
You present these two things where if you present the logic, you have two cards, of course, like that's how the trick works, right? Then it's like it's not magic, but you put this mental framing of, time travel, or it's changed color.
Something, yeah.
And now suddenly it's impossible, right? People are like, how could two of spades exist? I know that there's multiple decks in the world and that they're printed all the time, but the fact that that card exists right now at this moment twice, it's like, how is that magical? Oh, because you put a framing on it and it makes it magical. Right? Well, not just
And
the
that
framing, but then you show you convince them of the magical moment.
And that
right?
framing came from being able to work in the moment. You know, like
that improv kind of thing. And luckily, I kind of had the backup in my pocket, so I did plan ahead in a way. But now, for instance, I've been doing a stand-up show lately, and everything's gone wrong in that show. Everything I can think of has gone wrong. Actually, the worst-case scenario has gone wrong, where it's literally the grand finale of the show, which is a Bill to Lemon. And
of your stand-up?
Yeah, the stand-up, I do Bill to Lemon as the grand finale, but it's something that I slowly set up throughout the entire show. But this is the thing. I actually have to slowly prepare everything through the entire show as well. But this one time I was just on autopilot, because I used to not have Bill to Lemon in the act. And so I just did the whole show like I didn't have in the act. And so I get to the end and I'm like, okay, you got the bill? Bring it up. And I'm like, wait, nothing is set up at all.
Oh,
and
no.
the person's walking up on stage. I'm like, there's no grand finale right now. And I figured out a way to get out of it.
And
That's
you got
what's
out of it.
interesting,
And
right?
somehow there was a bill in 11.
Somehow the miracle happened.
Yeah,
but,
the miracle happened.
There's a moment where I actually thought it was a nightmare at first, where I was like, is this like a dream right now? Nope, this is worst case
This
scenario.
is the worst case scenario.
That was... I've been to a show where that happened, where the grand finale just didn't happen, and that's just the worst.
You ready?
That's the worst letdown as a spectator.
I do think it is your job as the magician to figure out some way out of it.
I
right?
agree.
And that is what separates. I guess you can use improv, to a certain extent, but you do need to figure out a way.
You just
out
need to
of
figure
the
it out.
situation,
Yeah.
right?
The worst thing that ever happened to me was it wasn't even a magic problem. It was an injury that happened live.
Oh, God.
So, and I don't even do.
Oh,
so this is so bad. So I did a long time ago. I did a card to Lemon. This was when I was doing shows for like little tiny groups. I don't know, like 12 years old or something. Like very very young groups at weird little summer March break camps. That's what this was. So I'm at this March break camp, and I did this other trick with a can of pop, and I cut it like this. And I sliced my hand entirely open, and then, but I'm like, you know what? I can man through this. I can power through. I can push. I can whatever. So I'm like, it's bleeding a little bit, but I'm like, whatever. I'm dabbing it on the thing. Next trick. So I take the cards. I'm like, here, pick one. I'm spreading the deck, blood all over all the cards. They pick one of these bloody cards. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so sorry about the blood. I say, okay, put it back in the deck. They do. At the time, I don't know what the premise was, but I throw the deck at this basket of fruit. And now I pull out a lemon, and I take the knife, and I start cutting the lemon.
Yeah.
And the lemon juices start dripping in my fresh wound.
Oh, God.
And I am going absolutely ballistic. I open the thing. I pull out this bloody card. It's this mess. I almost was just totally in tears. Yeah. So, like, I was like, thank you, bye. And I just ran to, like, a sink and just washed my hands and I, like, left.
But you still finished the trick.
I finished the trick. That's
so funny.
Actually, but I have had a story where I didn't get to finish it. Where one of the tricks, I set an envelope on the left side of the stage, and one of the waiters at the restaurant, it was a gala. So one of the waiters at the venue like saw this thing. They're like, oh, and they just like took it to the kitchen, I guess. So I had this like I had a headset mic on, and I was like, and for my final trick, I put an envelope. And it was nowhere to be seen. And at this point, it was as bad as it could have gone. I just went, has anybody seen an envelope? It's like yay big, but yay big question mark on it. And the whole audience is like looking at me. Like, this is like 300 people. And they're just looking at me. Like, is this part of the whole thing? And I literally had nothing. I was like, does anybody see the envelope? They're like, no. And I just went, I'm really sorry. I hope you like the first 2 tricks of the 3 trick set. I'll see you guys later, and good night. And I left, and people, and you know what? Weird thing. I booked a gig out of that event. I don't even know how. And people come up to me, and they're like, oh, like, you know, was the envelope, was that going to be something that called back from the first trick where someone was thinking of a this, and then I was like, no, it was a completely different trick. And then like an hour later, the waiter comes by and he goes, "Did you lose this? Someone told me you were looking for it." I was like, "Thank you for all of your help." I super don't, but that was bad. Have you ever had a story where you didn't get out in time?
There is one. Oh my God, this was actually one of the first magic shows I ever did as a teenager. And this is when I learned to not put all your tricks on display on a table, right? Like, a lot of people have cases and stuff. Yeah. I thought I was working with a friend of mine, right, who's also interested in magic. We were going to put on this dual magic show, but we had this table where we laid out all our tricks, like it was like a museum exhibit or some bullshit like that, right? I was like, we're going to do tricks, all the tricks in order, right? And like, halfway through the show, some little kid just comes up and pulls the tablecloth, and like all the tricks crashing onto the ground. I'm like, what just happened? Right? But there's one trick that I was obsessed with as a kid, and it's like the worst trick ever. But I remember just seeing a magician do it when I was like, you know, in kindergarten or something like that, and I remember just loving it, where you put the knife in the head. You know, you basically mutilate the person on stage. Where you put the knife on the head, you pour milk into their head, and then someone pumps their arm while they have their hand in like a funnel, and then milk comes out, right? Classic comedy milk funnel routine. But I was obsessed with doing this, right?
What an amazing
My
title.
friend and I were like, okay, we don't have milk. And so we're like, what are we going to do? Oh, we'll use some pop. We got some, like, Coke, all right? Some Coca-Cola. And so we fill this gimmick up with the Coke. But the problem is, milk, I guess, has a very different consistency than Coke does, right? It doesn't have bubbles and crap like that. But anyways, the milk will stay in the gimmick perfectly. The pop just leaks out everywhere and doesn't stay in at all, right? And so, on top of that, we also had a broken milk pitcher, and so it didn't work properly, and it didn't work very well with the pop either, right? Because we had to use pop with that as well, right? And so, literally, we literally mutilated this kid on stage. Or like, you know, the trick is like, oh, you're pretending to do this. No, we destroyed this kid.
You poured Coke all over his head?
First we take the knife. Knife is broken, so we kind of like stabbed his head, right? So right away it was like, oh, sorry about that. You know, it was like jammed in the handle or something.
Oh, no.
So his head kind of hurts, right? Luckily it's a cheap piece of plastic. But he's like, oh. Like, shut up, kid. And then we like take the milk or the pop.
You should be dead.
Yeah, you should be dead. It's magic.
This is way better. Don't stop complaining.
It's magic that you're not. And then you like pour the.
It's just a cold hand.
We're pouring the pop into this thing, but it's like actually pouring onto his head because it's not working. So we're just pouring pop on his head now. We're like, leaking pop. We're like, quickly, put your hand in it. Put your hand in it while it's leaking pop. We're like, pump his arm quickly. Pump his arm quickly. Magic! It's just the worst. So, yeah.
And that was before you learned improv, and now that stuff doesn't happen.
I just don't do that trick.
I
don't do that trick.
Especially not with Coke.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're ever doing that trick, the learning lesson,
milk.
Don't use pop.
Milk.
Don't use any pop. Use milk.
Do use milk.
Do use milk. That's a property.
Do use milk as recommended.
Yeah, for sure.
So another question that's really related to improv and related to magic is scripting. Do you come to your shows and to your walk around magic? Does your tricks have very hard scripts? Do they have loose scripts, or do they have like almost no scripts? I mean, we were talking to LeClaire, and he's talking about his stage show, and we were laughing because he goes, yeah, I basically know the first trick and the last trick, and everything else I basically just decide as the show goes on, and sound cue people hate me, right? So I'm wondering, as someone who does improv, do you really leverage your improv and go out there with nothing, or do you go out there with like way more structure? Because magic with structure.
Well, I guess what's interesting, it depends on the type of show you want to go for, right? As for a close-up, there's a lot more improv used there because you kind of know the set of tricks you're going to do. But again, it's a direct interaction with people, so there's going to be things that happen that you can't anticipate, right? And then there'll be things that do happen that you can anticipate, right? And so close-up, I definitely utilize the improv a lot more. But I definitely use it in stand-up as well. But the type of show that I'm trying to do for a stand-up performance is very different from, LeClaire, I guess, and some people, because there's the theatrical aspect.
Yeah,
and once you put a theatrical aspect into the show, there does need to be some kind of scripting. Mm-hmm. Now, I actually didn't want a script for the longest time. I actually almost refused at one point. I was like, no, I'll just try to develop natural. Because I think there is an advantage to scripting something naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Not sitting down and just thinking it up in the room, what you're going to say, what you're going to do, but actually going out on the field that you want to perform in and just performing, and then just seeing what comes out of that performance and then remembering those things that worked, right? And so I actually scripted in that way where I did a little bit of both, right? So for a lot of the close-up, for instance, it was all of the close-up, except for now I actually try to do a little bit of kind of sitting down and think of stuff for close-up magic, because I did the opposite for so long. I would just go out there and just develop the shtick naturally, right? But now I think there is something that's kind of nice about sitting down, now that I know my character and kind of what my shtick is, sitting down and then applying just a sort of a more intellectual side to the scripting, and not doing it in the field, I guess.
And being proactive about it, and then working in the field with like the blips, the times where you jump out of the script.
And you remember the things that do go right, and you remember the things that don't go right. But as far as on the stage goes, that I had to kind of really do a bit of testing, kind of come up with it, test it, and then see if it worked or didn't work, and then kind of tweak it that way. And so this is something that actually Tyler Wilson, who you should also get on, he's wicked.
Sure.
But Tyler Wilson, kind of told me is that scripting, what it does is it helps you see everything in front of you, right? Because when you try to articulate something just in your head, it can actually be a lot. You think you know it, but until you actually articulate it and try to put it into words, it's just this kind of weird muddled thing in your head that you convince yourself you kind of fully understand, right? But until you actually put it into words and writing, you don't actually see it, right? And so once you kind of see the whole entire picture, then you can kind of fine-tune it that way. And so what I would do is I kind of had all these routines in my head that I thought were interesting, and then I built somewhat of a framing for these routines, right? But then I would go out and try them, and then try to develop the script naturally from what I just said. And then when something would work and I would say something right that I liked, then I would kind of write that down into the script, be like, okay, I could say this. So you're constantly tweaking the script through natural performance, and then at the same time tweaking the performance, I guess, through this following through on the script type thing, right? So both kind of have this symbiotic relationship where you kind of have to do both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could just do one or the other, but I kind of like to do both, I guess.
Yeah, and anyways, well, it's interesting to know and good to know that you don't, you're not running free of scripting and that you see merit in it, because I agree, I see a lot of merit in it, and
merit in it, you know,
and like
just the fact that you get to see it, right? You get to actually see a visual representation.
It helps.
Of what's in
it
your
helps
head.
cut out the stuff that's not relevant.
Yeah, and you
know?
get to see how long it is, right? And the thing is, you don't follow the script word for word, right? But it is this sort of thing that's there that you kind of just get used to following in a way, and so it gives you a confidence to use the improv, right? Because you have this script now that you can go back to at any moment because you know it.
It's like a timeline that you're...
Yeah, and so you can kind of venture off and start going and exploring other things, right? But then you can come back to that kind of base that you have, right?
Yeah,
so
it stops you from wandering too far.
Exactly, right? And so that's something that, I love doing improv, right? It's fun, but I still feel I enjoy improv most when I have something that I can cling on
to.
Right? Just a structure of some sort, right? You're doing... It could be a skit or it could be anything, right? But just having some kind of structure that you can kind of cling to when you feel like you're lost, because it can be very easy to get lost.
Cool. So we're just about wrapping up. Just so rounding around the end, just to ask you, we usually do this around the end. We do last tips and last ideas about improv. So I'll start first, and I'll just say that first of all, some of that's very helpful, and it's helpful to know that you don't, as someone who is good, is very talented under the under the moment without preparation, that you do still have a lot of things prepared. And it's good to know how much that it helped you. It's good to know how much that it helped you. And anyways, it's good to just learn about the way that you're using improv as leverage. Tyler, anything you learned?
I think one of the most interesting things that I learned, this is what's most exciting to me about this show, is that it can be helpful in so many different ways, in so many different aspects of your life, is that you just gave a recipe for success, in my mind, is like, think about what you want to achieve, and then go with the flow of what's around you in order to achieve that, right? No matter what that is, with your magic, with any goal that you have. Like,
and the key is doing, right? You have to put yourself out there and do, right? You could dream about doing improv, or you could dream about putting on a show all you want, but you have to actually take the steps to actually do it, right?
Right.
And so, and when you do, you'll find that things kind of just start to happen, and they start to connect, right? Things
it's that yes and
connect.
coming back,
Oh, everything, I've been listening to a lot of Alan Watts recently, right? But one of the things he was saying is that there's not really any separate moments. Everything is sort of kind of this collection of things kind of all unfolding together in a way, right?
Right, yeah.
One thing cannot happen without the other thing happening first, right?
And do you have any last tips for maybe a magician trying to put more improv in their magic, or maybe just that way of life, and how they can get it to help what they're doing, maybe be more in tune with their surroundings, be more in tune with their audience?
Well, honestly, one of the biggest things I've learned is to just be open to change, right? Because something you realize is that everything is transient, right? Nothing stays the way that it stays, right? And so it's going to change regardless of whether you like to it or not, right? And so you can either accept the change and go with it, or you could fight against it and become a grumpy, old man that doesn't like anything, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the path to there, right? Is to not accept everything and just kind of, but there you also have to be able to try to change certain things that you don't like, right? It's not just
proactively as well. Yeah,
right?
it's not just about
going
through the flow. Like, you can also have a plan and
because not everything is flowers and cherries. There are negative things that happen.
And also, it's beneficial
sometimes
to
you forget about the lemon. Right?
It's also beneficial to as much as you can be proactive about what you want, or at the very least, write down and know what you want. It's not the first person even yet that we've had on the podcast who's mentioned that things have aligned for themselves right after they set themselves those lofty goals. Right. So just, living that yes and mentality with things that come your way while also planning. And I think that's a really, really great place to wrap up. So big thank you to Chris Mayhew for doing a great interview. And
let's have some water. It's so refreshing.
And we will see you all on the next episode of Discourse and Magic. Please check us out on iTunes. Check us out on everywhere. Subscribe, like, and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. And if you don't like it, then don't worry about ratings. They're not really that important.
Yeah, ratings
don't mean a thing.
They don't mean anything at all.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.
Don't go out of your way. We're using the actual, not us talking. Not us. We're using the actual recording thing. Okay. Yo, there... Oh, I can't fucking clap. Okay. Hey, there it was. Hey, you made it. Oh my gosh. Take this. Oh, God. Okay. I'm gonna try and get through it without fucking laughing because I think that's awesome. I won't laugh. Hey, you made it. I'm glad. Why are you doing hey? I like it. Oh my God. I like it.
Okay, do it. I won't laugh.
Yeah. What's better than
no, do
I don't want to do hey anymore. You talked me out of it with that. Hey. Well, there you have it. That was our interview with Chris Mayhew. It was a journey. It's always a great time hanging out, talking with him. I hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did recording it.
It was a hoot.
So if you did, please check us out on iTunes, as we mentioned. And, we have a website, discourse.inmagic.com. You can shoot us an email at discourse@discourseandmagic.com. That's discourse@discourseandmagic.com. Follow us on Twitter at Magic Discourse.
Ooh ah ooh ah ooh oh e. And if
newsletters, we have a newsletter.
It is so fun. You guys are gonna love it. But the trick is you have to sign up. So put in your email, and if you've listened to all of these episodes or even some of them, then it's probably the sort of thing for you. So check it out. And yeah, other than that, we will see you all on the next episode 5, with a very super secret special guest.
Fun. Secrets.
Do you
want to hear a secret?
Ooh, is that a song?
Do you promise not to tell?
Is this a song?
I'll show you the video later. You're going to love it.